Make yourself comfortable. So we had a bit of a headache because we were planning to do a live stream of tonight's event, and a lot of people were already logged on to watch this event over the internet. But unfortunately, the service we use seems to be down. We couldn't use it. But rather appropriately, we've got another service which works from a phone, so we're actually going to be live streaming this from an iPhone tonight. So the guy over there, he's not stalking anyone, he's filming the event. So
you're welcome.
Okay, so just to get started, there's actually 3 groups involved in tonight's event. The Tokue PC Users Group. Let's just have a show of hands from the Tokue PC Users Group. I guess I am as well, and I guess originally this event came about was because myself and Gary were chatting, and last month's event, I think there was a big request for people to hear about smartphones. We said, okay, let's do an event. And I said, well, we've got, with Paul here, I run a site called Mobile in Japan. Who's a Mobile in Japan reader here? Okay, cool. Good. Quite a few people here. And so I said, well, why don't we bring that community together, because that way we'll get a lot of experts in the room, and I hope after tonight's event we'll have a lot of good debates about smartphones and what people are using. And then also Digital Leave Japan. I think we've got 1, 2, 3. They also joined and promoted tonight's event. So it looks like we've got a lot of people here who heard about it somewhere on the Ethernet and found their way here tonight. So thanks everyone for joining. The Tokue PC Users Group usually has a section. Do you want to come up and do that quickly, or okay, very quickly. Do you want to come up? And then one of those sections I'll introduce. We do have the TBC has a section at the meeting every month where we do buy, sell, or giveaway. And so Jerry's brought a lot of stuff to either sell or give away, but I think we'll probably give away. So there's a pile of things here and some bags and okay, let's do that at the end though, so you get a chance to talk to everyone. And I'll hand you over to Gary, the president of the TBC.
Hello everyone, my name is Gary Wolf. Nice to meet you. For those of you who haven't met me, as Andrew said, I'm the president of the Tokue PC Users Group. We're about 3 years old now. It was formed back after the IBM PC was first introduced, so we have a long rich history in Tokyo, and I'm privileged to be here tonight and welcome everyone. What we usually like to do is just take a couple of minutes to introduce some of the key players. Our previous president called them the MVPs, the most valuable players in our club. So I'd like to introduce some of our officers. Mr. Mike Tokue, who's our VP, and he's been go ahead and my name. His 3rd year as our vice president, and as you'll hear later tonight, very smart man in a lot of areas. So thanks, Mike. And when you came in the front door, you probably saw Tony. Tony Whitman is our longtime treasurer. Man wearing a ponytail, great man, he takes care of all of our financial accounts. And the man sitting next to him is Peter McMartin, who is, we call him our chairman. He's the one that sets up our chairs, and he does a lot of work volunteering for the club every month. And who else out here that I can mention? Michael Buma is over there in the corner. He's our corporate liaison. He's the man that works with our corporate sponsors and solicits corporate members for the club. And let's see, is Michael Wright here today? I haven't seen Michael Wright. Michael Wright is our systems administrator and webmaster. And usually he runs the help desk at our meetings. So anyone that has some kind of problems, they can bring their laptops to the meeting and get some help. I'd also like to recognize our corporate sponsor who's here tonight, Mr. B.G. Paul with Top Tech Informatics. We appreciate your support of our club. We're going to really abbreviate the business portion of the meeting tonight. And so what I'd like to first do is just turn this over to Mr. Jerry Sapan, a longtime member of our club. And we actually call him Mr. January because he actually presents at our club. He has presented at our club for the last 3 Januaries. So Mr. January has a lot of things he's brought tonight to give away. So very generous man. He's always bringing stuff to give away. So give Jerry a hand.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jerry Sapan, as Gary just introduced me to. I'm not going to take up much time in this because it's a busy schedule tonight, so just a real quick couple of bullets. I got some PC carrying bags. By the way, everything is for free tonight, so it's just a matter of coming up and see if it's something that you'd like. But I got some PC bags I don't use anymore, shoulder bags, 3 of them here on the floor. And I got some textbooks here, a little bit outdated, but the information might still be useful. Looking good on the web, so basically a book on web design. Web security, if you're into security. Again, a little bit outdated, but may be of use. Digital photography, if anybody's interested in digital photography techniques. And then marketing on the internet, which is more business-based. Anybody can use.
Yeah, I like that design.
You like that? Okay.
Yeah, thanks. We can,
and the other thing I have here is Adobe Creative Suite Production Premium, but it's only a Taikenban, which is the test model, but it's the original McCoy, real McCoy from Adobe, that's the Japanese model. Video Studio for video editing, a little bit older, but version 7, Japanese with the original discs inside. And then I got a bunch of PCI cards here, those that like to tinker and still build their own PCs, anything from Ethernet related to soundboard to, and then these small 2.5-inch USB, mini USB to standard IDE 2.5-inch discs. And then last but not least, some rewritable, used but rewritable DVDs that they can be erased and rewritten to. That's it in a nutshell, folks. I shall go ahead and go back to the person in charge of the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Seneca.
You're welcome.
Do you mind if I
Go ahead, help yourself. Anything that's up here, basically. And the cards here.
Okay, we usually have a portion of the meeting where members can ask questions they might be having with their PC and so forth. And we're going to go ahead and skip that slide and use the panel. If any of you have any, Michael Lang is around we can talk about just one more point for our club. We do meet on the first Thursdays of every month at the Tokue Union Church in Milton Sunday. So at 8 o'clock, our next meeting will be April 2nd. So feel free to come to our club. Everybody see time. I don't know, we have a formal announcement tonight, introduction. Okay. I don't know if Andrew's going to get a formal announcement tonight, introduction actually. I just want to say a few things about him. I first met him about 10 years ago when he was president of our club. And I tracked his career through the years and just can't help but be amazed with this man. He's very, very generous and gracious for his time and his expertise. He has been our corporate liaison for the past decade, ever since he sat down as president. And it's just amazing, what I've seen him do through the years. The PCAL conspiracy, there's Tokue 2.0, events.net, his own company, CDP, this incredible guy now with mobile in Japan. So I just want to tell you, I really admire everything you've done, and thanks for putting together this program. That's all for the Tokue PC Users Group. So let's give Andrew and the rest of our fans a big hand.
Okay, thank you. That was a very, very kind introduction there. I try to keep myself busy, and I'm glad it's appreciated. But I'm not the expert here tonight. We've got three mega smartphone and tech and all-round geek and gadget experts here tonight. I'll let each of them provide a quick introduction. Before we do, I'll just introduce myself and my background with mobile devices. I've been an armchair smartphone user since my school days when I wanted a Cyan device, and I say armchair because at the time I couldn't buy one, but I felt that I studied them so much I got to know the device without actually having owned one. Then finally, when I came to Japan, I got a Windows mobile, it was then called Windows CE, PDA, and I had one of the first CF cards, the compact flash cards that you could slot into a device and use it almost as a phone, but really as a smart connected PDA. And as soon as the first smartphone, I think it was really the first smartphone came out here, the Windows Mobile one in 2005, is that? The Wilcom. Yeah, the Wilcom was really the first smartphone here. I was pretty much in line for that, and I've got a habit of buying devices on the first day of release. I'll line up and outside the stores and get the latest ones. And so last year I was in the line for an iPhone for an amazing 17 hours just to get one on the first day. And since then, I was a long time Windows Mobile user. Now I'm completely converted to iPhone. So much so that my latest nightmare a few weeks ago was that I dreamt I was at the beach and I was wading into the water, and suddenly I remembered that my iPhone was in my pocket, and I took it out and it was drenched and it wasn't working, and I woke up and I was sweating, and I thought, oh. I realized it was a nightmare, and I was like, try not to get my precious iPhone's not damaged. So that's how much I really value my phone. I use it so much every day. I've probably sent hundreds if not thousands of emails using it since I bought it last year, and certainly couldn't do the number of things that I do if I didn't have a portable connected device. So that's me. I'll now pass on to the rest of the gang, starting maybe with Steve to my left, to a quick introduction to himself.
Hi, I'm Steve Nagata. I've lived here in Tokyo for about 7 years. I came here working with the financial company, doing technical consulting and training, looking at helping them create better devices, better products, better tools, so they can increase their efficiency globally. I've been a smartphone user for a long time. I've been a PDA user for a long time. I think the first PDA I owned was the Casio E1. Anyone remember that one? I think it was 97, something like that. I've had a variety of devices I go to, and like most people go to stocks, I think. And just generally, I've been working very closely with mobile technology, and this is really a key field in global workforce management right now. I think the first 3 years I was here in Tokyo, I spent an exorbitant amount of my time trying to build or find a BlackBerry-like device that works in actual. And they started using this basically to refer to PDAs that were mixed with cell phones. So it was a PDA structure with a cellular capability. That would give you information that you could sync to other sources, or you could pull live information, stock information, things like that. The modern term, I think it's greatly changed what we think of as a smartphone right now. And generally, I think what we do is, think of the opposite of a smartphone being a dumb phone, right? Which is the majority of phones out on the market right now. A dumb phone basically is a phone where the basic capabilities, where the basic functionalities of the phone are set by the manufacturer. So there's no modifiable OS on the phone, and everything that goes on the phone must be approved of by the manufacturer. With Windows Mobile, with the iPhone, with the Google phone, with Symbian, we've seen the movement toward phones that you can now enhance with greater functionality, that you can have more free access to information by using your phone. By modifying the OS, that there's developed user communities of people who develop for the OS and who add additional software and additional functionality to it. I don't know. That's kind of what my take on is what a smartphone is. You guys have a.
I agree with you totally. For work, I used to have to use a PDA to interact with servers and services. But now, with the iPhone and with Windows 7 mobile phones, I can do all of that with one device without having to switch devices. It is smart.
Yeah, maybe for me, the day the phones came smart, I mean, it was all the rage years ago, you must remember that, it was, we all had PDAs like Palm without the cellular technology, and we had a phone, and we were all like, oh gosh, I would love to have both, and I was transferring like my contacts with like infrared from one to another, And I think smartphone became smart today. And I think you're right about it was the one you the Palm 7. It was the first one to actually integrate both. And that was the first smartphone. It was maybe bulky, it was not perfect, but that was maybe the first smartphone.
Okay, just to answer, I think there's maybe four things that in some way do define a smartphone. Like you said, the syncing is one, but also particularly in Japan, the access to regular email. So the same email you're getting on your PC, you can get on your phone. Amazingly, that's actually still quite difficult from a Japanese phone. Not, am I right in saying that right? You have your Docomo or your SoftBank email address, but you can't, for example, get your Gmail, get your corporate email. The other part would be full web browsing. I think of a rich web browsing experience on the phone. Again, the Japanese phones here now, to some extent, have implemented that, but they've implemented it in a really bad way so that you have one mobile web browser and then you have another application for browsing the full web, and you have to switch between the two depending on what you're doing, which is not logical or user-friendly at all. And then, like Steve said, being able to add third-party applications or making it easy for people to develop third-party applications, I think is another key aspect of that. So if you're thinking, why do I want a smartphone, keep those kind of four key aspects in your head. Maybe we should also cover the downside of a smartphone as well. What are the downsides? Why would you not want a smartphone?
I'm going to give two answers here. One answer is basically if you're using a smartphone and you rely on it and you put all your contacts in it, you put all your notes in it, you have a few applications that you're using constantly, you update the data in that. If you don't back up your phone constantly, the minute you lose that phone, you go to the beach, you go into the sea with it in your back pocket, you lose everything. But saying that, it's the same as the days when filofaxes were popular. Everyone had their whole life in their filofax. If you lost that, you dropped that. You got it wet, it was all gone. But nowadays there are tools and services, especially there's a plug for iPhone. If you use Mac's.me service, literally all your contacts, all your mail, some applications with notes, the minute you make a change in it, within a minute, it's changed up on the web. So if you have a couple of Macs at home like I do, the minute I make a change when I'm out and I put a new contact in, I know that as soon as I get home and I open my contacts on my Mac, they're going to be there. So if I do lose the phone, which I haven't lost it, but actually the first iPhone I got was damaged, and they replaced it after about 3 months. When I had it replaced, I didn't lose any data because it was all on .me.
Well, I would the first downside is they crash a lot sometimes. Yeah, it gets on my nerves because obviously they're more complicated. I remember using Windows Mobile 5 on the Palm 750. It was a nightmare. We crashed every hour, and we have to reboot the thing. And then even with the iPhone, I have some issues. So instead they crash out. There are more complex machines than a single normal phone. To add to what Mike just said, the other thing I would say from the corporate point of view is security. Because more and more people put a lot of data into their phones, especially into BlackBerry. And what do? If you lose the phone, it's not only if you put it on C and you have to use the data, but if it gets stolen, you just do not know where you put it, and you have like access to confidential information. Which, by the way, one of the reasons the iPhone has still not gained a big success in the corporate world. How do you do that? It becomes more dangerous because people still see, most of the people I see, they have all these applications, all their content on their phone, but they do not think it is a smartphone or not. They just think it's a phone. They're very careless about it. And from the security point of view, it's very tough. We had a lot of problems with corporations that used to work for it because people were just losing the information. Obviously, the same thing with a laptop. But with the phone, there was no security is less, and you could access a lot of documentation of banks or financial institutions. That's the downside, because people do not realize they have a computer in their hand. They only think they have a phone in their hand. Maybe.
I really feel that, like I said, I'm an iPhone user, and I get the question almost every day, should I get one of those? I'm thinking about getting an iPhone. What's so great about an iPhone? And I would actually say that most of the time, these people, I recommend that they do not get an iPhone. I remember when I went to Disneyland when I was a kid, and I saw the cars, and I'm like, oh my God, I am so going to be on those cars. And I get on the car, and you see there's this rail in front of you, and basically all you get to do is you get to push the accelerator, and you get to drive, and this was the least satisfying experience of my entire life. I thought this was just a waste of my time. I'm 7 years old, and I'm that pretentious. This was a complete waste of my time. I was very, very upset. I complained to everyone. But reality is that most people take that ride and they like it. And most people, when they have their cell phones, they don't want all these extra functions. They love to have the functions, but they don't want to know how to do it. They just want to ride the rail. They just want to have everything go and everything work the way it's supposed to, without any thought or without any reading of the manual or learning any new techniques to gain that functionality. They just need to continue doing what they're doing, maybe with flashier graphics, maybe with a better screen. And that's really what a lot of people are looking for right now. So when I talk to people, I ask them, are you happy with your phone? And if they are, then they're probably not going to like an iPhone that much. If they're really unsatisfied with that experience, if they want to do a lot more with it, if there's things that they can't do, or they're really upset, they need to be on Facebook 24 hours a day, and their cell phone, they want to be on Facebook through their cell phone, then the iPhone is really for these people. And that's what a smartphone is. It's a compromise. You lose some stability. You lose some focus and some guidance around you. But now you're wide open. You can install new software. You can install new capabilities, and you can do a lot more. It's not for everyone.
Okay, great. I think we will have a Q&A session at the end, so there'll be plenty of chance for questions.
I sort of agree with what you just said, but there's one point that I'd like to make, though, is that if someone came to me now and said, I'm interested in the smartphone, and if that person wasn't technically savvy, I would still say an iPhone is the way to go, mainly because basically the major difference I find is with an iPhone and with a Windows mobile phone is the same reason that at work I use a PC, I use AS400s, I use Unix machines, but at home I use a Mac. Because when I get home, I want to have a machine that I know that when I push the button, it's going to boing at me and it's going to work. And it's easy to just install software and it works. And I think I can use the same sort of analogy with the smartphones as well. With an iPhone, as long as you don't jailbreak it, if you keep it standard, you have this tool called iTunes where you can download applications. And Apple spend a lot of time testing these out to make sure that they are just click and go, and it's easy. But the thing is, your analogy of the ride at Disneyland is, I think, what you get with an iPhone. In other words, as long as you don't jailbreak it, you're getting what Apple want you to have and the applications that they accept you to have. If you want to start fiddling with it, you have to jailbreak it, you have to do something that they consider illegal. Plus, you're getting the same sort of experience, I think, as a Windows mobile machine, where you can fiddle with it, you can manipulate it to your heart's content. But if you keep it standard, I think I would still suggest an iPhone is the way to go for the first time.
Okay, that's a good transition into the next point I want to cover. But we've got Blackberries, we've got Symbian devices, we've got iPhones, we've got Android coming up, which is this Google supported open operating system. Anything else? Maybe we can start why. Let's say why would you use one over the other? Let's maybe start with an iPhone. Why would you use an iPhone? I think you've covered some of it there, but maybe. No, why would you use it?
Yeah. Mike just summarized basically why do we want an iPhone. I mean, first let's be clear. The first thing with the iPhone is marketing. People want to have an iPhone because it looks slick, because it's fun. The mic doesn't work? Oh, thank you. Yeah. So I was saying the first success with Apple is not always iPhone, is it's a marketing thing. It's just people want to have the iPhone. That's the first thing. Whatever, you don't queue 17 hours for the latest mobile 6.5 phone. You don't do that. So that's part of the story. But I mean, still, why do you want an iPhone? It's simple, it works, the UI is great. I mean, it's not a revolution. People tend to think the iPhone is a revolution. I don't think it is. The App Store, actually, to think iMode in Japan was already doing some kind of App Store back in 1999, so it's like 10 years ago. If you think about the touch screens, obviously not the keyboard maybe, but many other phones before that had a touch screen. So everything is about simplicity and the UI and marketing. That's why you won't want to have an iPhone. It's simple, it works, and also obviously what was the key thing, and I don't think even Apple expected that, was the App Store. You heard about it. It was like 100 million apps downloaded. This is huge in less than a year. You can do whatever you want with the phone. I have Twitter, for those using Twitter. I can actually, look tonight, Joseph there is actually, okay, that's a jailbreaking iPhone, because you can't do that on a normal iPhone, but you can actually live stream a cast. We have a broadcasting over the internet with the iPhone. I almost never call and I almost never text with my iPhone. I only use standard email, Twitter, and all the other applications. Maybe for some people it would be games, because games are very popular. So that's why you want an iPhone. As far as is it a business tool? Almost. I would say it's 90% business. If you wanted to use it as a business, Andrew just said you use it as a business. I also use it for as a business tool. Then again, it's not perfect. I'm a consultant, I'm by myself, I do not fit in a corporation. For that, it works really great. I can be mobile all day long and I have access to my emails, multiple accounts, I've got access to Microsoft Exchange, got access to a lot of stuff, and that works well. Now for a big corporation, maybe we'll come to that later, I'm not sure it's still the way to go. And also, we'll have to dig afterward why it's still not as a success in Japan as in the rest of the world. So that was for the iPhone.
Maybe I can contrast that with Windows Mobile, since I was such a big fan of Windows Mobile for many years, simply because it was the only smartphone available in Japan. But by contrast, Windows Mobile would often crash or freeze a lot. It was hard to use. You had to use a stylus pretty much to get around. If you didn't have a device with a slide-out keyboard, it was really hard to type, and so you really had to carry a PC around as well. One of my biggest concerns when I moved to an iPhone was how fast can I input emails. I was like, I'm never going to be able to do that on an on-screen keyboard. As I said before, I've written thousands of emails, and I'm not talking like two-line emails, I'm talking full, long, 1,000-word emails with written notes. Some of them I've sent to him in the evenings have been these long dialogues, which I can fully type on the train, and I don't feel that I'm losing that much speed. So Windows still now with their on-screen keyboard doesn't live up to the Apple's. In terms of applications, you have to download to your PC first, usually, and then copy the application over to get it onto your phone, which is a nightmare. In comparison, the iPhone, it's literally 2 or 3 clicks and you've got a new application installed. There are ways around that for Windows Mobile, but it's not for everyone. You have to kind of know what you're doing. And just the general usability. I mean, like Mike said, you pick up an iPhone. I'm a PC user. I've never used a Mac, so I'm not a Mac or an Apple fanboy. But when you pick up your iPhone, you know how to use it. It works perfectly, really intuitive. It's just a pleasure to use. In contrast, Windows Mobile can be frustrating, annoying, and Steve said maybe this is a nightmare, maybe I'm something overdoing it. So now I've got a lot of friends at Microsoft, and I know they've worked hard over the years, and they've really made a big push to get Windows Mobile to where it was today, and they made a lot of developments, and I hope that the team at Microsoft are going to put their collective intelligence together, and over the next few years they're going to impress us again with some really forward-thinking developments, but that remains to be seen. Are there any reasons why now you would use a Windows Mobile device over an iPhone, or?
As I said earlier, I use 3 phones.
Just 3?
Yeah. I have the iPhone. I have a small Nokia and a BlackBerry for work. But sometimes I put the chip in a slightly older Nokia for the E90 communicator. And this has a full keyboard. And it's very, I use it for a specific use. And the reason is as Andrew was explaining, with Windows Mobile and also with Symbian, a lot of the people that used these tools basically were in the technology business. So they developed tools that would help them with work. And I have a cable that allows me to connect this to Cisco routers, and I can go into the iOS of a Cisco router and control a Cisco router. I can control firewalls from this and use it basically as a terminal. That's something that I still can't do with an iPhone. And earlier on, when Steve was talking about security, one of the good things that BlackBerry did actually to make it the standard in business tools now is that if you lose your BlackBerry and you subscribe to a certain service, you can actually have the service make your BlackBerry redundant wirelessly, remotely. So basically, you lose your BlackBerry, you think you left it in the taxi, but you don't know what you do. It's 20,000 yen now from Tokue for a BlackBerry. For that cost, you just call them up and say, get rid of it. And they will delete it and get rid of all the data in that BlackBerry for you. And that's the only real way I think you can be secure with these tools. I'm not sure if there's similar service available for the iPhone yet.
No, there's not. I think the reason why BlackBerry is very successful in Europe and the US is, again, a corporation. You can have a kill switch. If someone loses the phone, you can actually kill the phone remotely. So no confidential information will get out. You can also the VPN is also much more reliable. On the iPhone, the VPN is actually not compatible with all the Cisco routers, so that's also a very important point. And it's very simple, but for those who have tried the iPhone, have you tried to lock it up with the password? It's only 4-letter password, and you can actually turn it off. Meaning that if I'm the IT guy from a company and I'm giving you, my employee, I'm giving you an iPhone, then you just go to the settings and you just kill the password, and you have a password-free iPhone, meaning that if you lose it, no someone can access information even before it's been remotely killed. So that's the few reasons why the iPhone is still not good for business and corporations, maybe not consensus of corporations. No remote kill, no good password, and you know what you both guys said before. The iPhone works the way Apple wants you to use it, but for a corporation, it's not that what they want. They want to be able to actually modify it, to add password, to add their own VPN, and to lock the user in their own settings, and not allow the user to switch the settings. And that's not possible with the iPhone now.
What is a VPN?
Virtual private network allows you to actually communicate with the server in the company in a tunnel, if you want, completely safely. And I forgot to mention also calendar. Also the calendar, you cannot actually set up, accept or refuse meetings with the iPhone, which is also maybe another reason. And no Lotus Notes compatibility as well.
Yeah, the Lotus Notes compatibility. That's a monkey that I just got off my back that I'm quite pleased to have gotten rid of. The one thing I probably would want to correct here is that I've actually had a chance to work with the enterprise server for the iPhone, and it is in extremely limited release right now. There are very few companies that actually have this right now, but it is in release. It is in production right now. There is an enterprise server for the iPhone, which does have capability of remote wipe. It has profile locking, so that unfortunately the weak password is still a problem, but you can enforce a password setting. the majority VPN settings are definitely when you go through a pass-through enterprise server. The VPN does seem to work much more effectively. So, majority of these things are either close or already there, ready to go, but they are not available to your average consumer, and they likely will not be available for quite some time. Whereas BlackBerry has been able to bring a lot of that to the average consumer through the BIS system.
Okay, great. Well, I think maybe at the end of the session we'll talk about the future and maybe cover Android a little bit then, but I think now's probably a good time to open the floor for questions, and then we can basically answer whatever's on your mind. Now, because of the live cast and because this restaurant is really spread out, if you could come up and ask your question using the mic so that everyone can hear, that would be very much appreciated. You can grab this mic and then we'll use this one to answer. So just come up close to here and ask your question. Sorry.
Yes, thank you. It's more a comment really than a question. You were commenting earlier about the security on the iPhone being maybe less if you lose your iPhone and your data could be lost and all that. Basically, you can say this is pretty analogous to a normal PC or Mac or anything for that matter. So it's just a matter of whether you take security measures and you do first of all, you just password protect it, period, and then the strength of your password. For one, I mean, that's just one step, and I'm sure there's probably other solutions too, but if you just go ahead and ad hoc and don't do any password protection or anything, and then you go ahead and leave it at the airport departure gate or take it into the swimming pool with you, then, and if it's not password protected, then you can lose your data. But I think just take a normal, like you would do on any normal desktop computer or mobile computer that you carry around with you.
Well, that's correct. I said it's like a laptop, like any information. Just what Steve corrected me on is that on a BlackBerry now, you can actually, I mean, the company forces you to have a password, and you cannot disable it. And you can actually kill the information if you lose the phone, so wipe it out completely. That's the difference, because obviously as a user, like I've got everything password protected, and as you say, some people are just careless. But the problem is, as employees of a company, the only way you can be sure whether or not they're careless, that the information is safe, is actually force the user to use passwords and force the user to maintain a complete sealed phone in the company. And that, with the iPhone, is not possible now. I mean, apparently it starts to be, so I wasn't aware of that.
With the kill function for the iPhone possibly? Well, that does come with the enterprise server, but I think kind of, and building on Paul, the issues around security largely come into the user experience. For anyone here who's worked in large enterprise IT organizations, you're familiar with user complaints about performance, about effectiveness, and about problems that occur as a result of security that's installed in the system. One of the reasons that we have so many of these complaints and so many of these problems is that people have computers at home that don't have these security systems installed, that don't have these, so they're used to one experience at home with a PC and a different experience at work with a PC, and they want to know why is it different. They don't understand why it's different. They may not even agree with the explanations because it's not for their benefit, it's for the corporate's benefit. When the BlackBerry was introduced, it was introduced to corporate. It was introduced with the security installed. It was brought out with all of these protections in, and no one had a BlackBerry that wasn't protected. No one questioned when these things were put in. No one questioned the effects that it would have on performance, the effects that it would have on the end user experience, because that's just how it worked. If we were to now bring these things into the iPhone, with all the iPhones out there with no security, and you pull it out of the box, it has no password, it has no security in it, yeah, you're going to get complaints. You're going to have a poor user experience, no matter how innocuous the security you put in is. No matter how good, how smooth they incorporate that security, it's going to create a negative user experience. It's going to be a problem for any enterprise that tries to bring it into the organization.
Okay, good. Any more questions for that? Could you just come up here? Maybe have to be careful not to use the mic in front of the speaker, so if you just come up.
as you guys know, the three main smartphone companies OSs are made by Research in Motion, Apple, and Microsoft. I don't hear any Japanese names among those. Why is that?
If you look at the numbers, Gartner just released the numbers for Q4 2008. I mean, Nokia it has lost a little bit of market share. This is like, what, 14 million phones? I mean, Apple is only at 11 million. Windows Mobile is even like 14 million. It's about, RIM is 14 million, and Windows Mobile also in these waters. So, I mean, we tend to forget about Nokia because it's always said Symbian, but Nokia is the #1 player in the world. And since your question was about Japan, they're just going away with the Japanese market. So yeah, that was the question I asked before at the introduction of tonight, is why does Japan not use that many smartphones? I mean, I was really amazed how difficult it is to get one. Okay, I'm a Mac user, I would still have my iPhone, but I mean, I was trying to get a BlackBerry, it was a nightmare. I was trying to find a Nokia, SoftBank had a few, Docomo I think had a few, but I mean, it's really, when you go in Europe, now even for the end user, non-corporate user, you find BlackBerries on every operator. So I know the 3G was a problem because it's not, most of these phones were built on GSM, but still, when I see all corporate people in Japan, they still have like a small K-type. It's maybe, you know, what I think, I used my company, the company I referenced before, UB Mobile, we did create WAP portals. These were the first experience you could have with the internet on a mobile phone. It didn't work at all, honestly. It was fun, but nobody would use it. In Japan, mobile internet is key. Mobile internet is widely used. And that's always a problem by being first in the market. You also sometimes be last on the next technology. Now, everyone in Japan can access a mobile internet, which is great. It's true that now with a more normal internet you can access, Japan seems to be lagging. So I don't know, maybe you guys have more experience in Japanese markets, you can help me understand.
This might be a slightly different topic, but one thing we also should remember is Japan was very, very badly burnt just before 1990, when the rest of the world decided to go with IBM PC and DOS. NEC had their own operating system called NEC 98. And so, you know, I'm half Japanese, but when I first came to work in Japan in 97, I couldn't believe how behind Japan was as far as business computing. And one of the reasons is you have a whole generation of technicians, service engineers. I mean, the whole generation was focused on NEC 98. So when the Geist case came in and said, hey, we don't want to use that, we want to use what we're using abroad. We want to bring in the IBM PCs, we want to start using DOS, we want to start using Windows. You know, in Japan there was no skill set. There was hardly anyone that had, good experience with that. So I think, I'm not saying that's a major issue, but I think there is a little niggling to that where you have so many Japanese K-type companies who have, a very minor OS, which is just to navigate the tools on the K-type. And that they're willing to do, and they know they have to do it. That's the bare minimum. But I don't think anyone, Fujitsu, Hitachi, NEC, Panasonic, no one is willing to step out there and say, hey, why don't we have a Japanese OS for K-type, to begin with, that we take abroad globally to rival Windows Mobile, to rival Mac, to rival Symbian. And I think there is a little bit of a stigma there. It's not the whole, I don't think it's the main answer to your question, but I think part of that is there as well.
It's a really great question, actually. I like that question. And it's one that I've actually thought about quite a lot. Now, it comes on a number of levels, and there's a number of issues at stake here. First of all, you have to look at what a smartphone is. A smartphone is basically a two-part device. It is a communicator and business users using smartphones. There's nobody who's important who's using a smartphone. Oh yeah, excuse me. And the smartphone using people here in this room, of course. I'm sure that they will be emulating us before you know it. But really, popularization of a technology means that it's got to be popular. It has to be popular.
Actually, a point to add there. Something I've overheard recently on the train is when I've been using the BlackBerry, I heard a young couple saying, standing next to me saying, "Oh, that's like the one on the US sitcoms that we see." So they're seeing it through like Prison Break, CSI, and the US sitcoms that are now becoming very popular. They're seeing the characters using these tools, and so when they see them on the trains now being used by people working in foreign financial institutions here or guys here who actually start to use BlackBerries, I think it's getting popular in that way.
Actually, question to you then about why it's not popular. Why didn't any of these companies figure that out? And actually, because some companies, I remember Nokia was actually paying some people to have their phone, or they are paying to have the Nokia and the latest James Bond. I mean, so you could also do that in Japan and actually have a BlackBerry could work it out. I don't know.
It just takes one. All they have to do is pay Kimura Tokue to have it on one of his series, and it'll sell like hotcakes. But I think one of the other reasons that we have to remember is that you have a whole generation of Japanese people who are used to using a 10 key to input for messaging. And when you show them an iPhone and you show them that, hey, you can use a virtual keyboard, or I show them this Nokia, when I show them this, the first thing they always ask me is, why are there so many keys? How can you do that with one hand? To a Westerner, you need a full keyboard. But for a Japanese person, the normal 10 key is enough. So for them, I think that's also why at SoftBank, the Windows Mobile, you have the ITCs with I think it's the Black Diamond, it just has a normal 10 key. That's selling really well now. It's selling a lot better than the slide-out keyboard one because they don't feel that they have the need for the slide-out keyboard.
Yeah, and actually in the case of the iPhone, it's although there's a 10-key keyboard up there, I guess most people are used to touch typing and not looking at the keys. So when you've got a hard keyboard and you can actually feel and move around the keys, you can do that without actually looking at the keyboard. But on the iPhone, you really have to look at where you're pressing, and you can't basically touch type. Maybe just to add to the point, to answer the question again, but the Japanese mobile ecosystem was obviously very well developed and is one of the best in the world outside the smartphone realm, and a lot of the services, including the content, the applications, the payment, maybe not the payment systems actually, but at least e-money, and now the television, they've all been built around this ecosystem, and for foreign devices to come in and actually be fully in sync with this ecosystem has been difficult, and so that's maybe why we don't see as many smartphones here as we would do otherwise. But I think over the next few years, once we get a critical mass of smartphones here, we'll see a sudden switch, and we'll see the next generation of the Japanese mobile ecosystem. It will be interesting to see how that develops. More questions, right?
Certainly more a comment again than a question. A lot of the talk tonight has been about iPhone, pretty heavily. Google's coming up with their up and coming Android, which is free, open source, cross-platform. Anyway, it's open and it's touch panel and all that. What are your impressions about its introduction to the Japan market, or will it go anywhere in the Japan market as an alternative to iPhone? And what about Apple's intimidating Google about their multi-touch panel and all that?
I wouldn't put any money on it. The Google OS, from what little I've played around with it, is fun. It has a huge amount of potential. It still smells very beta. It still has issues that need to be developed beyond where it is right now. And that's Google's way of doing things. Google, I don't even think, has any intention of finishing the OS. They want to give the OS out there, and they want someone else to go and finish it.
They want to ruffle feathers.
They want other people to build on it. They want other manufacturers to start playing with it. They want to give a core away and then see what happens with it. I don't see the intention to take this to the final solution. And I don't see any Japanese manufacturer with the whatever it takes to actually do it that far. It's possible, but I just don't see any of your three major carriers doing much more than just slapping it into a phone and seeing how many units it will sell. It really does need to go beyond where it's at right now.
I will just add that there's another issue. I mean, I think the Google phone is fun. I've also played with it. But they will have the same problem that Windows Mobile has. Apple does the hardware and the software. BlackBerry does the hardware and the software. And Palm Pre, because that's also a very, very good competitor. I've not been able to play with it because it's only in the US and only like very selective people have it. As far as it looks out of it, it really looks great as well. But again, software and hardware. Google goes the same route as Windows Mobile, which is great in a way, but has the problem with usability is you have to then mix hardware from one company to one software that can actually be switched. That's the thing. I think it's a curse. It works for me. It's ideally better, but it's also a curse for the end user in terms of sales. So that's why I'm not sure about the Google phone success. I mean, the first one was a success because it was the first one and it's the only one. HTC does it and they branded it as Google phone. But the next one is going to be Google Phone 2, Google Phone 3. There's going to be other names. And it's just going to be another, like no one knows that behind Nokia there's Symbian. I think they have a Nokia. So they might think that we have a HTC or we have that brand, but they will not think it as a Google phone. So that's why I'm not sure it's gonna work. Mike?
I wanted to ask what you see coming from Palm, the Palm OS.
Well, it looks great. It looks great on video, so I cannot tell you more than that. I've seen a few videos online now.
Let's just cover that again. I'm not sure the point was covered, understood diagram, but Palm actually has released a new device already in the US.
It's not released.
Pre-release. They've announced, we're not sure if it's ever actually going to make the market, but they have announced a new device, which has got really good reviews, and we're all waiting to see if they actually do release it and then what the reception is once it hits the market.
Just from the videos, it looks cool. Obviously, everyone wants, again, it's iPhone-centric, everyone wants to be the iPhone killer. So everyone looks to be the iPhone killer. From what you see in the video, it's true that the experience on this Palm Pre could be very close to what we have on the iPhone. Now I cannot tell you more. I mean, no one. There's not even any reviews online available because you mostly see like from the Palm guys actually showing you. We don't even know. They only show the parts that actually work, and they said they might be released in June, but the Palm has been known to release their software with like years and years of delay, so we don't know. But it looks cool. That's all I can say actually.
Just to go along with that, it's definitely something worth paying attention to. It looks very, very interesting. It addresses a lot of the problems that people see with the iPhone directly, almost too directly. It does have this flavor to it. Well, we just want to get all the people who don't like the iPhone but want something like that type of device. But you have to take into account, well, what's Apple going to do next? Apple also knows what people don't like about the iPhone, and they have another OS on the way, and everybody knows that. So when the OS 3.0 comes out, is that going to dwarf anything that Palm has by the time it comes out? We don't know, but it certainly, what I'm very pleased to see is other people really stepping up to that level, which means that Palm will do it. There's got to be someone else who's going to do it. Google's now in the fray. We're getting competition, and competition is great for this market.
I I guess the question is, will we see the Palm in Japan if they do release it? Okay, one more question over here.
Yes, for 150,000 yen. Okay.
Just a quick question, actually two questions. One is, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name. Is it Paul? I think you were saying, we were talking about the convergence of the phone functions and the PDA functions in the so-called smartphone, and you, all of a sudden you can surf the web, you can play games, and when you were saying you use your iPhone for everything except calls, I think you said, in which case it would not, I guess, be a smartphone, it'd just be a smart. I'm just curious as to why you were not using it for phone calls.
Well, no, definitely. I completely agree with you. It's exactly reverse. Most people have, like, you call that a dumb phone, and they have everything on it, and they just text or email here in Japan and call. And I'm the opposite, it's true, because I'm using a lot of emails, actually. That's the way I communicate the most. So, I mean, I still call a lot, but compared to how many emails I send or receive during the day, it's not, when people, even myself, when I first bought the iPhone, I didn't expect that. I expect to use, just to read my emails a little bit when I was not in front of my PC, or Mac in that case, and call and text some people. And then, with the usability, I'm ending up using the email function so much that it dwarfs the actual phone usage I have. But I mean, it doesn't mean I'm not calling anyone or receiving any calls. Don't worry.
The other question I have is about the basic costs with the. I don't know about the other companies, but I think with Docomo with the surfing, web surfing functions, I think there's an all-inclusive fee of 5,000 or 7,000 or whatever, and you're still on a fairly small screen. I think it's much smaller than an iPhone. So then you have your basic monthly fee of 2,000 or 3,000 yen, whatever plan it is. I got 18,000 of them. And then you have your unlimited surfing, which is, say, 6,000. And then you add your phone calls, and I'm starting to think you're paying a couple $100 a month for smartphone bills. Anyway, I'm just curious as to why the cost is so expensive, and is it going to come down, I suppose, would be the question.
Because you'll pay. That's why they're so expensive. Basically, the telecom companies are still struggling to come up with new pricing schemes to accommodate the new technologies. So in the absence of a good plan, they're just going to charge you as much as they possibly can. Benefit of the doubt. Just give us as much money as you can, and we'll take care of it. Docomo is further behind. SoftBank was kind of forced into an unlimited data plan for the iPhone, which comes out to be relatively reasonable on a global level. Unlimited data and moderate phone usage will probably come under 10,000 yen a month, which is reasonable considering what you're using it for and the amount of data that you can push through an iPhone without really even trying to. Now, Docomo still relies on the walled garden system for their data plans, so even their unlimited data plans only account for proxy browsing, and then if you start going into unlimited browsing, then you're off their data plans, and you can really push up the $200 to $300, $500 bills. And of course, beyond that, there's the crucible of global international roaming, which can, one kind of senseless weekend in Tahiti, and you will have to get a mortgage or something to pay off that bill. That said, Verizon in the United States, I think it was Verizon in the United States who brought out the Storm, the BlackBerry Storm, is offering a global 47-country data plan, all you can eat, for $75. The pressure is on. The consumers are fighting back. They're getting really upset about all of these high bills, and they are complaining to the point that the companies have to pay attention to them or face loss of revenue. And when it's a matter of, well, we can't charge you that much anymore, you're not going to pay it, then they will stop charging that. There's no technical reason why they must charge at this point. So what they need to do is they need to have more pressure from their customer base saying, hey, we want this. We actually think that this is a necessity, and you can't possibly charge that much, or we will find someone who's going to charge less.
So our next event is actually a march down the multi-sando towards the headquarters of Docomo to demand for lower charges. That will be coming out in your mailboxes soon.
Your question actually comes back to why do you need a smartphone? I mean, most people, and that's the case with the iPhone, because of marketing, buy that because it's nice, but they don't really need to have their email all day long. They don't need to be able to be reached all day long and to using Twitter, all these social media tools on their phones. They don't need that. They pay that because it's cool, but they don't need that. I mean, rationally, you don't have to download your email 3 times a minute to be sure you have the latest update and whatever. I mean, except if you're a corporate user, and in most cases, then it's the corporation that pays for the bills, and not yourself. So that's the first question. I mean, people should ask. It's true that the problem with the iPhone, again, I'm coming back to that, it's so fun to use that I see many friends of mine that actually do not need to have their email, saying to email a lot, saying to using for whatever reason they would never have a need before, and it becomes a need just because they have the iPhone, and then they end up paying. And second part of the question, that's in defense of the operators. I mean, the operators, I'm not saying they're all good, but I'm saying they're not all evil. They lost. It's true they're losing revenue. They used to have a lot of revenue, especially in the US and Europe, of SMSs and texting. But people do not text as much as they used. Now they want to email. So email like regular email, like with your Google Mail, Gmail. Then they want to be able to access the real web. So no walled web that the operator would create for you. So all this, the only way, and I would add also maybe the applications can download. And now it's all the craze with the iPhone. Then you will be soon able to buy applications online from the BlackBerry, from the Windows platform, from the Google platform, from Palm. They're all preparing the App Store, whatever name they will give it. So, and that's not money for the operator again. And the operator has to subsidize the phone because otherwise you think, oh, it's too expensive, I won't buy it. So I'm not completely against operators there. So they have to find a way to make revenue. The only way is data, because data is the future. I mean, even now, the voice will go over data. It will not. I mean, that's also one of the reasons Apple is putting some limitation on its phone. It's because if you jailbreak the phone, you can actually start to use Skype or other voice over IP tools, and then you don't even pay the voice calls. You only pay data, and operators know that. They know the end of the road, everything will be about data. So they have to charge you. But why would you pay? It comes to, do you need a smartphone or not? Or if you need it, can you actually limit your use?
And one last thing to add.
Even now there's solutions for Skype on it.
If you know that you're going to do a lot of roaming abroad, rather than taking on a Docomo phone and paying whatever connection fees there are in Venezuela, especially if you're going to third world countries. If you're going to Paris or London or New York, you'll get good rates. If you ever go to third world countries, I highly suggest that you look into buying an Iridium phone. They're satellite phones. There are 75 low orbiting satellites that make up the Iridium network. You can get a cheap phone for now, about $400 US, and if you get the right package, you can get it down to about $1 a minute. And that means that you'll be able to make a phone call anywhere on this globe, except for the extreme north and the extreme south. In other words, if you go to the North Pole, forget it. But anywhere else in the world, you should be able to make a phone call, and the quality now is very good, and $1 a minute is going to be cheaper, probably, than your roaming charges through Docomo. And it's a very cool phone as well. The actual phone, I should have brought one tonight. The actual phone is about this big, and then you have an aerial that sticks out, probably about another 4 or 5 inches. And don't believe what they tell you in Japan. A lot of people in Japan say it's illegal here, but it's not.
I think that sounds extremely attractive to me.
I would suggest, as a person who has no iPhone, no smartphone, nothing, I have a computer on my desk and I send emails. I'm interested in buying a machine that carries in my pocket if I can use it for something. I don't care what it does, except what I want it to do.
What do you want it to do?
When I want it to do. For instance, think it up. You have your imagination. I don't care about the technology. I don't care about pushing buttons, but sell it to me on what it can do for me.
You want us to try and sell you an iPhone or a phone? A smartphone.
He wants you to
I don't care
convince
what
him.
it is.
He wants you to convince him.
Well, it depends what you
I
want
don't
it
want
to
to
do.
carry it. Yeah, of course, but you tell me what it can do.
What do you want it to do?
What do you want it to do?
I want it to be able to translate the machine information that I can't do by zapping on it. I wanted to show me how Tokyo is an interesting place by suggesting that I go down this street and I will find a very interesting tea shop here, and this is the lady who will smile to you if you show her your picture on the iPhone. I wanted to tell me when the police come to me how I tell them that I'm innocent.
You know, most of that is actually available now, but I would suggest waiting another 10, 15 years. Then you'll probably have a concierge service that can do all that for you.
And I'll buy it.
Sorry, one thing before I forget. We live in Japan, and I don't know how many of you watch TV, Japanese TV, but about a year ago, AU came out with an advertising campaign for their phones. And they had a Japanese comedian called Matsumoto Satoshi. And all he did on the advert was say, but I just want to make a call. In other words, his whole advertising, the whole advertising campaign was AU were going to come out with a bunch of phones that only made phone calls. No texting, no webmail, no nothing, just a phone. So, you know, there are people that like gadgets like us and who like to be able to do things with their phones because we don't want to carry PDAs or necessarily carry laptops around with us everywhere we go or a digital camera. If it could all fit in one thing, that's fantastic for us. But you also have to remember that there's a very large majority of the public out there who also want a phone just to be able to make a phone call and nothing else. But they wanted to do that well. So, you know, there's two sides to this.
And I know we're running short on time, so this may be the last comment I've got tonight, but I just have to address this. You know, I've heard these requests, laptops that have a screen this big and weighs 2 ounces and has a battery life of 3-4 weeks. Requests. And you know what? They're reasonable, and someday you'll get them. But, and I can guarantee you, someday you'll get it. When I first came to Japan in 1990, and I spent a lot of time, I backpacked across Japan. That was my first exposure to Japan, was just traveling across Japan. I met hundreds of people. And one thing that always struck me as very interesting was that whenever I was supposed to meet someone, there was an indoctrination session. Someone would take me aside, would show me all of these maps, would show me clocks, would show me telephone numbers and backup meeting places and all of these things so that I don't miss my appointment or I don't miss my meeting with this person. And you know, I did have all of these very elaborate maps. When I came back in 2002, it was gone. People were like, yeah, just go to that station. When you get there, call me. The maps were gone. I'm like, well, you know, what happened to this, you know, spending 15 minutes showing me every detail of where I'm going to go before I get there? Like, no, just call me. You know, about 4-ish. So I'm like, okay, yeah, so the society has evolved. Right, okay. Now, with my iPhone, what am I doing with my iPhone right now? You know, when Google Maps came out, I was all about Google Maps, and before I go anywhere, I'd go and print out a Google Map. I don't print out Google Maps anymore. Why would I bother printing that out? Why would I sit in front of my computer for 5 minutes to look that up when I could just get close and then hit GPS on my phone? Why do I have to email religiously during people's working hours? When I know that they'll get their email and I'll get my email. Why do I have to look up information before I do anything? Because I can get any information I want whenever I want now. I have become very lazy. And I'm becoming more lazy with time. And I think society is becoming more lazy. And we're lazy people. So we're just going to keep getting lazier, and the technology is just going to keep advancing to the point that you get everything you want. Because if you want it, someone else wants it, and someone's going to make the computer do it for you. Someone's going to give you the tool that they'll do it for you. So everything you want, you will get eventually. Whether it's right to your needs right now, I don't know. But just keep an eye out. Keep an eye out because it will be there someday.
Like, there will be a magazine about what you do. The question is it well produced or not?
No, we'll have to cut it short, but I'll send you a video of Tame, these conferences, TED. There's a video of one woman from the MIT labs that shows what smartphones, I don't even know how to call that, will be in 10 years. And they're actually trying it now. If you put that on you, you can actually display the numbers on your fingers. You don't have to have any. You just have something in your pocket, and the screen can be anything in front of you. Can be the T-shirt of the guy in front of you. Can be a wall. I mean, I'm going to send you the video. It still bears bones. It's not perfect, but in 10 years, I'm certain people will use that. And maybe it's just going to be for you, maybe not. But I mean, I'm certain it's going to be there.
I come back to this time not on software, but on hardware. I work with Sony, and Sony is working now on a piece of paper that you can wrap around your wrist, which will be, in fact, a computer.
Just to add to this little discussion about advancement, 5 years ago I started working for a consulting firm, like I said at the beginning. And part of my job was to be out in the desert in Iraq and Kuwait and know where I was. So I had this PDA, which has this huge thing on the back, and that just tells me where I was. Okay, that's all. And then I had this phone, which then I could send the data back so that we collected all the information. Now, if you think that everything that this does and the speed that it used to take, 3 years ago I changed, or 2 years ago I changed to this, which has got mobile GPS as well. And then last year I changed to this, which can do all of it much better, much quicker, and it's more stable. So one thing to charge, one thing to keep looking after, one thing to keep safe, rather than 3 or 4 bits and pieces. Technology is advancing, but one thing also I wanted to say was smaller necessarily is not better. And I think we've all found that out. Until 3 years ago, Tokue had a phone that was about the size of a matchbox that no one liked because it was too small. So we're advancing, but I think we're advancing in the right way now.
Okay, good. I think we're going to have to leave it there. We've gone quite a bit over time. I think Steve's got about 10 different phones here which he carries around every day, which he really wants to show people.
Well, I just want to mention, if you want to see a rate of growth, the oldest phone I have here is this one, and this phone is 3.5 years old. So I've managed to accumulate just these many smartphones in 3.5 years. Not including other phones, regular phones, dumb phones that I may have owned. So we're seeing at least enough of a growth that it would spark enough of my interest that I'd go and buy another phone about every 6 months. That's the kind of technology growth we're looking at.
Okay, great. I think that's a good place to finish up. We'll be here the rest of the evening, and I'm sure we've not covered everything tonight. I think we'll probably have another event in another 2 or 3 months. So thanks for coming. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and please give our panelists a warm round of applause. Finally, thanks to Joseph for his Sunday all night. His site is iPhoneNewsJapan.com, so he's got some good reports and things on there as well, so thanks to Joseph. Enjoy the rest of the evening.